Welcome everyone. This is our more or less monthly masterclass where we go through a specific topic. Typically in the product, we dive deep. Sometimes we go a little broader, different areas of the product, in the hope that you learn something about how you can get more value out of LeanLaw. There's a lot of subtlety and depth here and there that you might be unaware of, and hopefully some of it will help you get more value out of our product. So today we're gonna talk about some additional features that we've added under our compensation report, compensation module, you could call it, category. Chase will go through that. After he's done with that, I will also talk about a number of other enhancements we've made. So there'll be two parts. There's kind of main topic, probably about 20 minutes or so, depending on how many questions we get, and then a list of 5 or 6 additional things that we'd love to share that are sort of other enhancements we've made over the last month. If you have a question, just put it in. Do we put it in Q&A? Is that where we encourage?
Q&A works, or chat too.
Right. So we'll see all your questions, and we will almost always answer them live here in the meeting. If we don't get to your question, we'll try to follow up afterwards. I think that's it. Apart from the fact that I forgot to introduce myself, I am Fred Wellerup, CTO of LeanLaw, and with me is Chase.
Yep, that's it. That's my whole title, Chase.
Got it.
Chase, most of you are probably already familiar here at LeanLaw. I'm the customer success manager. So if you haven't spoken with me in the chat already, you probably will at some point.
Awesome. Well, I'll leave it. I'll hand it over to you, Chase, and we can dive into today's topic.
Sweet. So I wanted to start off by saying thank you everyone for joining, but also we've talked about compensation and distribution in the past before. So I'm actually going to share a couple of links in the chat to those past conversations or those webinars. So after this, you can go check those out if you're not already familiar with the way compensation and distribution works here. Pretty solid hour-long video on each, but to just kind of do a quick version of that, what I wanted to do is actually open up a whiteboard here, if it's going to let me. It might not. Looks like Zoom does not want to give me the option for a whiteboard. That's fine. So what I was going to show was essentially the circle of what compensation looks like. When you get a payment, you can think of it as a pie. And what we'll be talking about today and what we talked about in the past is the different ways that you divide up that pie, who gets what size slice based on what kind of priority, because that's really what all this is about, is picking apart or figuring out who gets paid out what based on the work they did or based on their status or the situation on that specific matter. And the exciting stuff for what we're talking about specific today to compensation, what Fred and his team engineering have added is more flexibility to picking up how that gets divided up, and specifically where that extra goes. Like when you cut up the pie and there's half of it left, where does that go? Who gets that? Previously that was all, and Fred, correct me if I'm wrong, the firm share is what was left over and then divided up. That was the previously the calculated value, but now we've added the ability
that's probably a little too much detail up front. Let's dive in, I think.
All right, we'll just skip right to it then. Oh, hey, there's the whiteboard option. We will use that at a later date. There we go. So everyone should see my screen now. Cool. So you're all probably already familiar with the settings, obviously, but then the reports section here, go ahead and hide that. And this right here is the focus of this entire thing. This is what we're going to be talking about that allows you to switch or set some firm-wide preferences on how revenue is allocated. So kind of like I what I was trying to get to before we flipped over here was talking about this calculated value here, or determining which between the firm share and the working attorney share, which share takes priority, or which share does the firm set the preference on. And Fred, I think I'm kind of butchering it here, but basically what this does is, do we want preference to go to the firm or to the working attorney when we're looking at the revenue allocation, correct?
Right. I would back up a little bit. So just so that everybody's on the same page here, like this example we see here, we have 10% under originating attorney share, 0% for responsible attorney, 0% for firm share. And then we have a calculated value of working attorney, 90%. Now, this is a simple case where a firm has an arrangement where the originating attorney gets 10% of any collections, and the rest go to the working attorney. The working attorney is the person on the invoice that have hours against what was billed. So, this is a simple scenario. And the new thing is the more flexibility in how we calculate this. If you want to allocate a firm share, you can put in 10% on the firm share, for example. Now the originator gets 10% and the firm gets 10%. And as you can see, there's 80% left over for the attorney. This is fine as a default, but many of you want to override these percentages at a matter level. So it might be that for certain clients or matters, you have maybe 20% origination as an arrangement, or 0%, or you split the origination. In that case, the difference comes out of the working attorney percentage, because that's the calculated value. So let's say we add 20% under a matter for origination. Now there's only 70% left for the working attorney for that matter when we split the collections. So that's how it worked. It all worked until we added this additional feature that Chase is about to share. Did that make sense, Chase, to kind of tee it up that way?
It made a lot more sense than what I was getting on about.
Okay, good.
So just to kind of recap real quick, the way that we're looking at it right now is the way that it previously worked, correct?
Right.
Okay, where the calculated value was what the working attorney received.
Right.
Okay. Let's see if we can answer this. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead and keep going. There's a question here, but I'll see if I can read it.
Okay. So this is, like Fred had mentioned, we now have the ability to set these preferences at the firm level and actually at the matter level. Well, firm, user, and matter level. So currently we're looking at the firm-wide default. If nothing is set at either of the other two levels, this is what gets applied. As is pretty common with LeanLaw, you normally do have that kind of flexibility with the firm, user, and matter. This is just following that same kind of format. So if we wanted to set these revenue allocations on a per user basis, we'd open up right there, the show user allocation. And we now have the ability to set the working percentage right here, as well as the origination. And this will override what has been set as the default at the firm level. So if for Heather Mears here at the top, shows this in gray, the default there. If I set that at 20, now every time she's set as an originator, she receives 20% instead of the firm's default 10%.
All right, we had a couple of questions that I can answer. There's a question about, okay, what if the attorney is paid a dollar amount instead of a percentage? For example, they have a certain rate on the matter, but it's not a question of a percentage of the collections of what they worked, but they might get $200 out of whatever was billed for each hour.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot allocate based on dollar amounts, but so what you would have to do is you'd have to make it a percentage that's based on their rate. For example, if their rate is 400 and they need 200, that's a 50% working attorney share. So you would set working attorney to 50%. Now, if they have a different rate on a different matter, let's say it's different on a different matter, you'd have to override the working percentage on that matter to match the 200. Sorry, that got a little complicated. The short answer is you would have to do it with percentages and override things. You can't put the dollar amounts in directly. That's the short answer. There's another question, which is how do you allocate the paralegal work to the responsible attorney? That we can show right here. Let's say, is there any paralegals down here, or we can pretend
This is a timekeeper.
Timekeeper.
Mm-hmm.
You go down, open this section that Chases has visible right here, and click on the little note. It shifts between self, which means that it's allocated to the individual as a working amount. Expenses is a little bit of a special case that the revenue is considered expenses. And then there's responsible. So you want to set it to responsible. That way, any revenue collected for that individual will go to the responsible attorney.
Question here from, and Fred, this is pro only, correct? This is not core?
Right.
Because we've got
there's a question that somebody sees something different on the screen here. Let me get back to you. It's some of this is pro only. There's also a possibility that your account has this switched off. When we release new stuff, we kind of switch it on for some clients first and then for everyone later. So we'd just have to kind of double check that it's switched on for you if you're not seeing what we're seeing here.
Okay, so in that case, it may just be that we haven't enabled it for your firm yet.
Okay, I think that was the question so far. Keep them coming. This is a good chance to just kind of dive into any of these areas.
Oh, here's a fun one. Is working attorney the same as responsible attorney? No. Working attorney refers to the attorney or user who's doing the work. The responsible attorney may be doing work, but they're normally the ones taking lead on the case. Working attorney simply just refers to anyone who's tracking time or any items against that matter. So not the same. Not seeing any more questions here. So we'll go ahead and move on. Talked about the allocation preferences on a per user basis. These are firm-wide, but again, these are the defaults on a per user basis. So let's take a look at this, take a look at the matter level customization now. Here we go here, pull up this matter. So now, in addition to the previous columns that you're familiar with here, like your rate and the rate dropdown, you now will have the originating percent and the working percent, which allows you to customize the user's revenue allocation on a per matter basis. So basically the same thing that we were looking at here in the settings. Now it's just firm specific. Now, working percentage, the column will not appear if you have the firm share as the calculated value. Or is that, yep, I got that backwards. If working attorney is set as the firm default.
Yeah. Let's just back up again to the because I think it was set the wrong way, so it might have been confusing. If you can go back to the report settings.
Yep.
Right there. So once again, the topic here is calculated value switcher, which is confusing probably. The good news is you only have to set this once for the firm. So if you're having trouble with this, reach out to us or ask questions, and we can get it set up for you. Now in this way it's set up here, as we were talking about, the originating share, the firm shares is fixed, and then it can, and those values can be overridden at the matter level, and it comes out of the working attorney share. Now, if you switch it over, what the feedback we got from a lot of firms is, well, it's actually the working attorney share that needs to be fixed. Let's say we set it to 80% here. Now, when we have 10% origination, which leaves 10% for the firm, when we now override the originating share on a matter to say 15%, it's going to come out of the firm share now, so it's not going to touch the working attorney's percentage. So, and this is how a lot of law firms actually think about this. So it's probably likely, based on my conversations with law firms, that this is what how your firm operates. That the origination comes out of the firm share, not out of the working attorney share. But there's many models here, so you know your own algorithm there. Now, if it's set like this, where the working attorney, or sorry, the firm shares the calculated value, that's when we open up the option to override the working attorney share on the matter. So that's what Chase was getting at earlier. You now get that additional column where you can say, hey, on this particular matter, Chase is not going to get 80%. He might just get 50 because of some arrangement, or it's split. Maybe Chase and Courtney are going to get 40 each, or something like that. So I think that should maybe clarify it. Did we get other questions here? It sounded like
got one from Karen. What if
what if we want the adjustment spread evenly or against originating? You'd have to there's no way to do that at the kind of firm level. You would have to let's say, so let's take an example here, Chase. If you go back to the report settings, and we have 10% originating, 80% working. Now we want maybe an adjustment to originating to affect working by let's say we increase originating to 20%, not here but on the matter, and then we want 5% of that for the working attorney and the 5% to firm share. What you'd have to do is to, on that matter, if we click over there, you'd have to change the origination to 20%, and then put in working percentage of 75 on all individuals here. So 75 here. So you'd have to sort of manually split it here. We can't do that automatically. You'd have to put it 75 all the way down. So a little fiddly, but that would be a workaround. Let's see. Okay, it sounded like that might have answered the question. And then there's a question, can you allocate the origination percentage between the responsible attorney and originator from certain working attorneys on the matter?
So that
good.
So that the only certain attorneys are affected by the allocation for responsible and for origination, or for originator.
Yeah, I think the question is it if the origination is 10%, for example, can that, or can you vary the origination depending on who worked on things? For example, if a partner works on a project, they pay 10% origination to the originator. But if an attorney works on a project, they pay 20%. I think that's how I understand the question. We do not have that flexibility at the moment, is the short answer. There's a follow-up. Okay, so it sounded like I did answer that question, and now the question is, when can we have that ready? So let me talk to you, Kelly N here, and we can discuss the need here. Actually, this goes for all of these compensation conversations. We've added a lot of flexibility in here, and of course, we're not just adding random things in here. This all comes from you. It comes from your needs and your firm's kind of compensation algorithms that we want to kind of codify in here. So if you have a way of doing this that's not covered by the current arrangement and options, let us know, and we'll see if we can accommodate it. So I think that's all the questions. I might have missed something.
Yeah, we got a couple more questions about when this will be enabled for Pro or for all.
Right. We're going to go and check. It should be enabled certainly for Pro. If you're not seeing what we were just showing over here, if you go back to the report settings, just so we can look at this again. If you're not seeing this, there's some switch that's not on in your account. I'm going to go away and after this meeting, make sure that switch is on for everyone. It sounded like it's off for some of you by mistake.
Sweet.
So in other words, it's available right away. I just need to flick a switch here. So sorry about that. Any other questions, Chase, that we're receiving?
Let's see. I think you kind of answered this at the beginning, but what do most firms have set here?
It's really hard to say, but I would say that most firms really just use the originating share, and that's it. Like it's only some firms that have a firm share, and most firms don't need to override it in that section at the bottom. They might just adjust origination at the firm level, at the matter level occasionally. But it's really hard to say. The bigger your firm, the more likely it is that you have something more complex. So I don't think there's a typical thing here. If you're a small firm and you're sort of wondering about designing a compensation arrangement, I would just encourage you to keep it simple. And hopefully, because there are a lot of complex arrangements out there that feel over complex. But anyway, that's not really my place to say.
Does setting the revenue allocation for users override what is set in the matter settings?
No, it's the other way around. the first we look at the firm level origination, that very top box there.
Yep.
Then we look at the individual overrides on this page. And then finally, and the final say is on the matter. If there's a number on this page under a matter, that overrides anything on that other page we just looked at.
Correct.
All right, can you explain add credits as revenue? All right, go to yes. So credits in QuickBooks or some payments are done as credits or applied to invoices as credits, and typically they signify that the invoice is written off. So you do not want to check this box in most cases. Normally it's indicative of a write-off. If you check this, any credit memos will be considered collected amounts, and we had to add this because some firms had credit memos as an opening balance for clients, and so this was a way that when they applied those credit memos that actually were considered quote unquote payments, it would count as in the reports. And it's, honestly, I consider this a little bit of a hack. I do not recommend checking this box. That's the short answer. All right.
There's another fun one from Amanda.
All right, can you summarize that one?
Let's see.
Oh, okay.
No need to apologize. If she's running a compensation report, will she be able to see the breakdown of hours for the matters, or
Yes.
will you have to go into the invoice sent to the client to obtain the hours?
I think so. Let's go. So all of this, in case this wasn't clear to you already, in which case you must have been probably pretty confused by the rest of this. All of these settings we've talked about all feed into the compensation report right here, and certain other reports, and summarize things in these buckets and add it all up. The question, so just so we can maybe just take a moment and click in here to Chase, maybe, or Frederick here. It gets summarized by client. You see all the dollar amounts. Once you click in, you can see the individual payments made. And then over there in the triple dot, that's where you can see under, there's an allocation detail. It's very handy if you don't know about this already. This will tell you why the numbers are the way they are. This is especially helpful if there's multiple payments for an invoice. Partial payments make all these calculations way more complicated and next to impossible to do by hand. So, but then there's the invoice summary, which summarized hours. And I think the question here was, is there a way to summarize those hours at the top level of this report here? And the answer is no. But let me know if I misunderstood the question at least. The answer is no. But if that's useful, I'd be curious to know why it's useful. Because there might be some other ways we can accommodate that. I'm curious why you would need to do this. So please get hold of us about that, and we can continue that conversation.
Oh, here's an interesting one from Karen.
Okay, so now there's a question about locking, and this. So when we look at this report, it's completely dynamic. Every time we tweak a setting, the numbers will change. So I might go in and change the origination percentage for the firm from 10% to 15%. That will change the reports back in time. the reports are completely dynamic that way. Now, in reality, you want to lock the numbers, and this is so that when you go through a month of collections, you look at the report and you pay out that money, and then you go to the next month, you might tweak some settings, and then you pay that out, and so on. And if you go back to the original month, it would be nice to see those original numbers. That's essentially our distribution feature. And this is a much bigger topic, but and one of the links that Chase sent out is about this, but Chase, just really briefly, click on the billing tab and the distribution tab. Over here, you can take payments and combine them into what we call distributions. So you can take a month payment, put them in a distribution, and then once you have distributed, there's a way to mark something as distributed. When you do that, all the parameters get locked, so that when you go to the report, if you change any percentages later, those numbers won't change. So it's a bigger conversation exactly how you do this and how it works, but that's the short. It's short. It wasn't that short, but that was the long. That was the longer answer for that question, that about locking the settings in.
And to kind of add on to that, Karen, Fred was just talking about distributions. When you save those and you lock them in, you can actually run the compensation report by distribution instead of time period. So you can, it encapsulates it, so you can run reports based on those different distributions you had without needing to worry about the compensation values or the allocation values changing, because they're locked into that distribution.
Lots of depth here, and we're sort of wandering off in all areas of compensation and distribution, and it's a big topic, and so if some of this was part of, if you're not using some of these features, I really encourage you to dive in by watching some of the past masterclasses on distributions and on compensation reports, where we go a little slower and build it up a little more instead of just kind of jumping into some new settings. And then reach out and if you need help in terms of getting this configured. The high level kind of value of all this is that we, for most firms, we can essentially automate paying your attorneys and partners with this, with these features. We even have and you might or might not be aware of this, we have a way to send the distribution detail to Quickbooks as bills, so that we can complete the loop. Like you get paid, you get payments for your invoices, you have all this configured, and then you push a button each month, and there are bills created based on all your settings to pay your attorneys what was collected that month. That's also discussed in the distribution masterclass, I believe.
Yep.
All right, I think we are coming up on probably the time for this topic here. Chase, unless there's some other bits we're missing.
Nope, I think we've just about gone through everything we wanted to.
I wanted to take some time just highlighting a few new features. Totally on, or some of them are actually related to this as well, but most of them are not. So another 10-15 minutes of new stuff. What do you guys think?
And I'll actually, since we're wrapping up here, I'll go ahead and share those links for those old masterclasses again in the chat, if anyone didn't catch those at the beginning of the call. Both of those, like Fred was saying, are looks at the compensation and the distribution workflows of LeanLaw, both of which are pretty important to understand in order to get the most out of what we're talking about here with the revenue allocation. So make sure to check those out if you haven't already. All right, Fred.
All right, I'm gonna, if you can stop sharing, I will start.
Yep, there
Thank
you go.
All right, here we go. I have a little, I'm going to experiment with this little yellow pad, which shows us what I'm going to talk about, so we can follow along. Hopefully it won't get in our way. Okay, compensation reports. We were just looking at that, so I thought I would start there. You probably noticed if you've been on the product for a while that we changed some of the terminology here. This used to be called collected, and this used to be called share, and there was an adjusted share. There were some other words that we used for these columns here, and it was some of these were confusing, and we've cleaned up the terminology. And whenever we talked about work, it's how much an attorney put on an invoice in terms of dollar amounts. Work shares, how big of a share they get out of that, et cetera, et cetera. So you saw the worked work share over on what Chase was showing in the settings and so on. So anyway, it's the same numbers as before. We haven't changed, we've just changed the words. So don't panic if you see these. Some other little tweaks. We used to show expenses over here. This was only relevant for a few firms. And for a lot of firms, this was just noise, essentially. So apologies for the firms that need this. You need to just check this checkbox down here to be able to get your expenses back over here. So that's just as you drill in, it's sticky at least. So, you know, you don't have to click it once. So just be aware of that. If you don't see the expense column and you used to see it and you need it, then click the checkbox. All right, so report permission, since we're in report.
Real quick, we got a couple of questions. Kelly N asked, what are referrals?
Referrals, they are an advanced feature. They're actually not on for most firms. They're sort of a beta feature that you do need to get switched on. But it's a way of, it's sort of an advanced origination that we have here, where you can allocate percentages based on. It's essentially like if I have originated. If I have brought Doug to the firm, not the client, but the individual, like I'm responsible for bringing Doug into my firm, a referral can get me, you know, I can add a percentage, 1%, and now I get 1% of all of his collections. So that's what referrals are. This is not switched on for most of you. So if this is something you need, let me know or let us know. Somebody says LeanLaw is amazing. That is very appreciated. Thank you. It's what keeps us going. I sometimes only see all the problems we have, so thank you. All right, report permission. So I'm kind of speeding along a little bit here. Under user permissions, we did change the way that report permissions work. Basically, now you can enable, you can the basic thing is that some firms only want attorneys to see the My Revenue reports and hide everything else. That's not possible by just checking this. Before they would see a bunch of other reports. So you can switch reports on or off for certain roles. General reports is basically any report that's not explicitly sort of part of these categories here, like AR reports and some other things. Okay, onwards. Now, the big thing we're working on, and this was the topic of the previous masterclass that Chase and Nick ran. I missed out, unfortunately. This is really what we're like super pumped about at the moment. It can be seen down here on the email invoice email delivery, and it says beta because we're still kind of developing it. If this is interesting to you and you're not familiar with it, really do go and watch last month's Masterclass. But I wanted to share that we've added a few more things in here. We've added an account summary option and a full balance payment link, which the account summary is exciting. It allows, in the email, we basically summarize what comprise the payment that the client needs to make, which is especially relevant when there's trust involved and evergreen involved. So this is a more complex example where we have evergreen, which is a minimum balance on the trust account that can be configured, and then you see all this in the email. In the client will receive an email with your firm logo, which hopefully looks not like this, but they get a payment link right in the email that they pay with, but then a nice summary here of what's happening. Like this account summary has been very difficult to do in the context of Quickbooks, the Quickbooks email that basically just says, hey, pay this much and you owed this much already and here's the sum. Now what we've done is we're now including the trust information and evergreen information and totaling and making them into a combined account summary. Super pumped about this. And of course, the invoice is attached to the email in case you need some detail in here. But hopefully that's yeah, I think clients are going to love this, your clients. The other thing is that this payment link here, this includes evergreen if you have that. So it can be an invoice payment that goes to the invoice, or it can be a trust payment that's used to replenish the trust account, or it can be a combination of the two. It can be part invoice payment, part replenishment in one link. So this is the magic of Gravity Legal, our partner, where we can give you one link and the client pays one amount, and behind the scenes it gets split up into an operating account payment and a trust payment, and just handled just all automatically that way behind the scenes. Okay, so anyway, I could go on about this. It's super exciting. Like if you, we're putting a lot of work in here. Sorry, I missed the. Where did I go here? We're putting. You can see these coming soon here. We're putting work into making this email and these options to show your clients, how you're creating value for them, really, and a simple way to pay to make this as awesome as possible. Yeah, expect more here. Was there questions in this area here?
There was. Is there a way to set it to only pay the amount on the invoice and not extra? So
not replenishment?
Not replenishment, not past due balances.
Right. Yes. So we do. So this option here gives you a pay the invoice or pay the full balance, the invoice plus past balance. That's what this one does.
So by default, it does not allow them to pay the full balance. You have to turn that on.
Honestly, I've been so heads down in this the last few days with some, with how this works. I'll have to get back to you on some of these details. But in terms of the trust replenishment, we don't have I mean, the way it works right now is that if you have evergreen set, it will be included here. We don't have an option to turn it off. Anyway, please, as always, contact me if I somehow am not really understanding your issue, or we could talk more about this. We're totally open to and are actively tweaking this so it can fit all the different scenarios that we see out in different firms. So we're very nimble here. If there are some small sort of differences that need that would need to be accommodating for your firm. Sorry, that didn't make sense. Okay.
Yes.
Let's see.
Chelsea, to answer your question, yes, the pay icons are linked to Gravity Legal. So this that's not a word. The payment options here do all use Gravity Legal. So
right.
You will need to have, the firm will need to have Gravity Legal set up in order to use this.
You cannot use this with QuickBooks payments.
Correct.
So, okay. I think we'll probably be talking more about this. We might even have another masterclass on this in a few months because we're moving so fast here, and this is so key to. It's just a key part of the product, and fixes so many of the issues with QuickBooks that we're seeing you guys have with the invoice presentation and so on. Now, we don't actually change the invoice itself. The invoice is still from QuickBooks, the same old PDF file from QuickBooks. But some of the deficiencies in that invoice can sort of be addressed by highlighting certain things in the email we feel. So that's kind of the approach we're taking. Okay. Let's move on. Okay, so some smaller features that I also want to share. Small but important. Let's see here. Under drafts, we now have. This has been a huge frustration for many of you. When you review drafts and you see something in here, this particular item for this time entry, and it's like, this is the wrong matter. Like it was actually on the wrong client or the wrong matter.
Whoops.
Now, you already created drafts, another draft invoice for that matter. What you had to do before was to click on this, save it for later, which brings it back to ready to bill, undo the invoice that you wanted to put it on that might already have been edited or whatever, and then redo it. So that was really annoying. So now we actually allow you to, with this change matter option here, you can send it to another client or matter. And if there is a draft invoice for that client and matter, it appears here. And you can send it straight on to that draft. And so you can basically send time entries from one draft to another draft. That used to be a huge pain to do. So hopefully that'll save you some time.
Just a little. Not having to undo the invoice, undo the other invoice, move it. Yeah.
Right. I know some of you have been quite frustrated here. So I'm really excited about it. This is one of those that just saves clicks and time and just that monthly invoicing pain. Hopefully makes it a little easier. All right, next. Man, there's a lot here.
You've been busy.
Yeah, I know. Trust account setup. we're kind of joking that, everything you do is like we just add checkboxes, like, hey, let's add a checkbox for that. But yeah, in this case here, we've added another checkbox. It's over here under trust options, and it's called automatically pay invoices from trust. Now, this is really powerful, and also, make sure you understand what this does before you check it. What it means is that if you have drafts that or invoices for clients that have trust funds, before this feature, you would send those to QuickBooks. And over here in QuickBooks, you can see it's called bug fix client. There's a balance of 123, and we have a bunch of trust funds here, so we can pay it from trust. So we can pay that invoice from trust. That checkbox will essentially automate that, so that when you send a draft to QuickBooks, if there's trust funds available, we will pay that invoice with trust funds, and it'll be essentially ready to go once it appears in this tab here. Now, the issue, the reason I'm sort of putting a little caveat or a little warning on this feature is that once an invoice has been paid, you can't undo it easily. Like, you can't send it back to draft because it has a payment in QuickBooks. Then you have to go over and delete the payment, and then you can send it back. And I would like to add a more an undo function here, essentially, that allows you to do this. But so anyway, that is a feature that maybe is a little too powerful for.
Make sure
we're going to follow up with some undo function here. So
make sure that before you turn that on, you're very confident in the billing workflow. Whoever's creating invoices, sending them out, paying them, make sure they pretty well understand that, because like Fred said, undoing it, we can't currently do it in LeanLaw. You have to go into QuickBooks, and that turns into a whole another thing. So before you turn that on, make sure you and the billing team 100% on what the process is.
All right, we still have a little time for some more features. Here's another one. We talked about distributions briefly earlier, which is the ability to take payments and bundle them up in a distribution that you then give to an attorney or to your attorneys. And it appears that my page doesn't load, so that's
whoops.
Okay, there's something wrong. Okay, there's a send to QuickBooks function under that page that creates bills in QuickBooks for the attorneys. We added the ability to set the category or account in QuickBooks for each attorney, so that the bill that's created in QuickBooks has the right account on it. And you go over to, if you have this feature enabled under users, there's a distribution category here where you can set, if you're using this, you would have an account for each attorney that then gets set in here. So we added that. All right, finally, public API. We have talked about this before. It's actually been a feature that some of you have used for quite a while. And the note here really is that we opened it up for everyone. So you now will have an API tab down here. And there's some technical mumbo jumbo in here. If you don't know what an API is, you probably don't need it. But it is the ability for third-party developers to maybe connect other tools you have with LeanLaw to have data flow from different systems. Maybe you have a practice management system with clients and matters, and you want the clients and matters in LeanLaw to appear over there when they're created. It's not the API does not cover all use cases yet. It's currently fairly limited, and very briefly, it allows you to sync clients and matters, and there's also some limited ability to create time entries. But it's here, and if an API is something you think you need or you'd like to talk more about, it's one of those areas that we want to expand in the directions that our clients needed. So we need to hear from you here. And there's a question here about pulling custom reports using the API, and that's not something we currently have. We don't have any report data through the API yet, but that absolutely would be something we'd be adding at some point. All right. Oh, I feel like I talked a lot here, and it's
you just ran a marathon.
It's time, I think, to wrap up.
What, already? We just got here.
Yes. Cool. I mean, I really appreciate everyone asking questions and engaging. It's really important for us to feel that there's somebody listening on the other side, and it makes it more fun for us to answer questions on the fly, more interesting for you, I'm hoping. So keep that up. Let us know if there's topics you'd like us to cover. We have planned these ahead to some extent, but can absolutely accommodate areas that you feel need some attention or some spotlight from us.
Yep.
So let us know if there's an area you'd like us to talk more about. I think that's it for me. Anything to add, Chase? So
I'm just happy to be here.
That's good. Well, so am I, and I'm also happy that you're here. So thank you. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. We'll catch you next month.
Next time.